let's talk about how I was wrong about weed. Let's talk about how my historical perceptions on the plant was a little bit skewed, if you might say. And actually, wrong is just framing, it's just perspective, it's just opinion. So, I could equally say that I had a viewpoint at a time that suited me, and then down the road it changed. But that doesn't mean that I was wrong necessarily. I think that actually the reason that I used that framing to start this video is because it might perform well on the interwebs. And the reason that I'm kind of curious about farting around with playing those sorts of things, or playing with those sorts of things, the algorithm and all that, learning that a little bit more, is because, yeah, man, like the further along I get with this work, my own internal journey, the more I realize the power of doing this work and how amazing it is to be able to share it with other people. So every now and then we'll try a little bit of, playing the game, if you will, the YouTube game, the TikTok game, the whatever the game. Historically speaking, I don't spend a lot of time focused on that stuff. I always keep it in the background of my mind. And on this video, true to historical form for me, for Phil, is I'm going to go all over the board to a couple different places here. And one of those things I want to talk about today is the changes in my content going forward. So where I was wrong about cannabis. I've noticed recently I have a lot of people that will reach out to me, and it's been consistent throughout the time, despite the changing in how I discuss cannabis and weed on the short form content that I do produce or put out on TikTok and Instagram. And it's totally understandable. It's understandable because I still have the older videos out there where my perspective was a little bit different on the plant. And so, I'll have people reach out to me with, hey man, thank you so much for the videos. They've been really inspiring, in helping me to quit cannabis. And if you've seen any of my recent stuff, or you shared space with me or whatever, then you know my perspective on that. And so now what I'll do is I'll just say, hey man, thank you so much for the kind words. I got to ask, what's making you, want to quit? And a lot of times what I get, and the same thing if I get on a discovery call with someone, and that's been the focus historically, it's, yeah, well, I noticed that I'm lazy. I noticed that I don't have the motivation, and I'm just not getting enough done, or I'm not showing up as my best self, and all these things. And back when I first started documenting my journey, and I decided to take a break off of cannabis, at that time, I had the same exact perception of the plant. And I talked about it. Now, what I always also said was, there are people out there that have happy relationships with cannabis. And if that's the case, then that's great. My message has never been for everyone, but I do realize now more and more it is for a lot of people. So if someone has that feeling in their life where it's feeling like it's constricting them, taking a break off of cannabis, what I found is that, I did get a little bit more clarity. I did get a little bit more zest for life, and that sort of thing, motivation a little bit. But then other forms of self-sabotage would come up, and I would find myself back in the same cycle with cannabis again, right? Fast forward down the road, doing a whole bunch of internal work, working to, quote unquote, heal the emotional, quote unquote, wounds of the past, and really rewire the mind and work with the central nervous system and do all that stuff. It's an ongoing process. There's so many different ways that you can look at it and how to apply it and what to do with it. But that's the stuff that can really change the relationship that someone has with the plant. And so that's what I came to realize. So my original perspective when I first started documenting was, I really got to get my shit together. And that way of viewing and that way of looking at things served me. But now I realize that what was actually creating the manifestation of lack of energy or lack of motivation, XYZ, was really the deeper shit that I've been carrying along for a long time. And what I love so much about the time period that we're living in right now is that you can see this. The deeper you look into the self-help books, I was just mentioning this on a recent podcast. One of the top-selling self-help books of all time, I think it's number one, is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This particular book, and a lot of these self-help books and psychology and stuff like that, I mean, it illuminates or it's built on principles that sound a little bit woo-woo. Like if I had discovered and read Think and Grow Rich, 7 years ago or something, I would not have been in the space to really take it. I would have looked at some of these ideas and be like, well, that's not how the world works, because it sounds metaphysical and stuff like that. But, he got his information by interviewing a shit ton of people who were, happy and wealthy. At least that's how I recall. I know they're wealthy, but he interviewed a lot of people to learn what's different about these people that have reached these levels of success. And in my journey, I listened to a shit ton of podcasts that gave me that same kind of insight. There was a 3-year period where for work, that's all I did was listen to a lot of podcasts, and just continuing to pack in my mind all these ideas. In the beginning, I wasn't really doing anything about it, but I was learning and I was taking it in. My subconscious mind was taking it in. But so anyhow, get back to the thing. Sometimes I go around with the points, and that's all right. So when I say that I was wrong, I've addressed that. The shift now for me is tying into the second place that I feel like I was quote unquote wrong with cannabis, and this is my journey. A lot of the stuff I've said before, but now this piece I don't know if I have. I know I've spoken to some clients about this piece, but there's been this back and forth with, am I the cannabis guy? Am I some form of a cannabis guy? Or am I just a guy that shares content that happens to talk about cannabis, And I think that historically, because the majority of the people that I've worked with, that I've been blessed to work with and help in their journeys, have discovered me because of the stuff that I have talked about related to cannabis, right? And so there was a part of me, it's like, well, that's my journey. I'm supposed to be a speaker for cannabis. That's the deal. That's what's going on here, at least if nothing else right now, But I would just constantly have this back and forth, and I even changed like some of the writing on my webpage to say, all right, the thing that my offer, which is something that I learned is important if you really want to serve people, is that you have an offer that basically is helping individuals who are in similar situations that you were in, 2 to 3, 5 years ago, right? And so for me, the where I was at 2 to 3, 5 years ago was grappling back and forth with cannabis, but there was so much more that was going on in that time period too. So I was, recently going back and forth with, well, maybe my offer should be specifically around cannabis. But then I've also further learned that, if you're doing something like what I'm doing, which I always encourage anyone that is trying to look outside of the box to try and create their own path. With the internet now, it's like there's so many places to learn. Message me, and I'd love to talk to you about it, because it's such a big part of where I'm at, in my life, and what's been huge and transformational for me. Where I'm at now, I've been recently learning more and more, that the move is not to try and quote unquote niche down on one particular thing, but instead to show more and more of just, you in your content, however that means, whether that's like a vlog oriented style content or, podcast style content, kind of like this right now. This would fit into this new mode, which I've done a lot of this in the past, where, it's basically just like long form content, and you just share where you're at, what you're thinking about, what you want to talk about, whatever, but you do it in that organic way as opposed to the historical way, which I've farted around with all this stuff, my way. But yeah, so I look at it now and I see, it's not that I won't ever speak about cannabis or be an advocate for cannabis, because I definitely will. It's been a huge part of my journey, and I'm excited to share space with anybody to talk about it whenever, whether it's someone that's looking for a discovery call or the people I've had on my podcast to learn more about this stuff. Like, I do enjoy talking about it, but day to day, what I'm thinking about is this internal work, because it's what I do in my life and it's what I do with my clients. And again, there's so many different areas of that. And obviously I talk, or not obviously, but I do talk about that a lot in my content, as well. So that's what I want to discuss more, and like, that's kind of what this video is. It's like, hey, here's what's going on in my mind, and sharing more of that stuff, which is more how I started originally. Granted, it's way different what's going on in my mind now than when I first started creating content. But that's the idea. And so, I talk to people about the difference between, our conscious perspective and our thoughts and our unconscious drivers and the unconscious mechanisms of actions that, are behind everything. So it's one thing for me to see consciously, okay, I want to, stray away from incorporating cannabis in the video, but then unconsciously it's like, yeah, but that's what's worked. And I'm not having that thought. I'm not having that conscious thought of, yeah, but that's what worked. It just pops up. I'll give you a good example. I recently did a video about anxiety on, I think just TikTok. I might have put it on Instagram too. But in the video, when I went to shoot it, the thought was I'm going to talk about anxiety, and then within a couple words, it just came out. And whether or not this is with cannabis, blah, blah, blah. And I noted it in the moment as I'm doing the video in my mind. I'm like, I see that, but we're going to keep going because this is something to talk about, so I did it. And so it's a process for me, but I really feel called to, quote unquote, drop the pants a little bit more, you know what I mean? And just talk about whatever I want to talk about. And again, it doesn't mean that I won't have videos about cannabis, but yeah, shit's changing, and it's changing in a really good way, in a really beautiful way. And it only makes sense that begins to show in my content on the interwebs. And so if you've by chance been here in the past with me on YouTube, there's been plenty of times that I've said I'm going to start making more videos and, kind of touching on that. And from one perspective, I do make a shit ton of videos. It's just a lot of them go to TikTok and Instagram. However, in the recent weeks, I've done less of those because I've been thinking more and more about this and just working with my clients and just readjusting how I'm looking at coming towards content going forward, and all that's good. And but now we're here. Now we're here, and now I'm going to start really making more content. So I think at this point, I'm going to be putting these on both my podcast as well as my YouTube when I do these solo chat moment things. So yeah, and then, I'll probably take pieces of it, right, and put it into reels and things like that. So I'm going to be doing a series now, and now that I'm saying it on the interwebs, it's got to happen, right? No, but I feel really, really good about it. It's going to be called Mind Rewiring Variables, and I'll touch on that real quick, and then maybe go ahead and wrap this one up. I don't know. I might go further, though. We'll see what happens. I like hanging out with you guys. So, so the ideas will be called Mind Rewiring Variables, and I'll be doing little shorts for these on TikTok and Instagram, but then coming back and doing a long form for each section of it here on YouTube as well. And that may just be YouTube and not Spotify, I'm not certain. But yeah, so the first chapter of that I'm going to do a video on either today or tomorrow or the next day soon. I'm going to call, it's going to be the Mind Rewiring Variables, basically relationship edition, okay? And I'm just going to touch on this real quick. If you're and this ties back into the cannabis thing, and again, I'm going to do a video on this soon. Whether you have cannabis in your life or not, I know I just said that, but it's still this is a good point in that, right? Your relationships and how you interact with your relationships, whether it's significant other, parents, work, church, people in public, whatever. All of that drastically has a profound effect, drastically profound, on everything. The health and state of your brain, the health and state of your central nervous system, all that stuff, okay? So what I was saying is, if you, on the video, and I already did a short video for this on TikTok, but if you're someone who's looking to do the rewiring work, either alongside of cannabis or without, a variable that may make it more challenging or more easy is relationships that you are around consecutively. Boss, coworker, again, right? Significant other, brother, sister, roommate, whatever it is, right? These are people that you are around consistently, okay? If they are negative energy consistently, if they are judgment consistently, either judging themselves or others, if it's a closer interpersonal relationship and they are judging you for what you're doing, if they are manipulative in any of their tactics and speech, if they're always in a funk, whatever their energy is and you're around that, it's not that you can't continue to do the work to rewire your mind in a scenario like that, but it is going to make it more challenging. It is definitely going to make it more challenging. Still possible. There's other core principles that are super important. to tie it all together. That's not just that. But yeah, so I think that's good enough for today. This is going to be a little shorter video. That's the other thing. Okay, hey, we're going to go a little bit further. It's talked about that long form content right now is the way to go, but I think it's basically over 10 minutes or longer. And so I think that when I do these types of videos like this, who knows? Might be 15 minutes, might be 50 minutes, might be an hour and a half. I don't know. We'll see what happens each time. Now, the mind rewiring variables, those are going to be a little bit more quote-unquote organized. Historically speaking, I like to flow with just whatever comes to mind and ride the wave, and just get to everything that way. But certain types of videos I'll make, I'm going to do more of like a bullet point. It's not going to be a script because I do not like scripts, but more like, okay, yeah, this one is the relationship, so we're going to open with parents and what that's like, and then we're going to dive in a little significant other and what's that like, and give examples and XYZ sort of deal. So excited to get that done, excited for this new chapter and to share it with all of you. And for anybody that's been here, and I've said this kind of stuff before, the longer you've been here, the more cool it is for sure. But even if you've only been here for a little while and you're enjoying sharing space with me, man, I'm enjoying sharing space with you, and I'm so grateful to each and every one of you that have contributed to this journey, whether it's just viewing a video and that's it, or commenting or whatever. Obviously working with me one-on-one is amazing too, but I'm just so grateful for all of it. I really am. I can't say that enough. So until next time.
Just you white in me again. Just you white. You'll be studying.